Hey, Danny. Great to have you in the class, man. Looking forward to working through Romans together this summer. And I hope we will be able to catch each other in person a little bit here at the beginning. It sounds like for most of summer, you're going to be overseas. But even then, we'll try to hopefully offer some times for the live Zoom discussions that work for you as well. But I thought here in week one, I'd just send you a video reply and say hello and give you a little reaction to what you've written here for week one, which I think is great. I uh, I think you talked about the opening of Romans is loaded. That I think is right, and it's true in one way or another in all of Paul's letters. Paul, contrast to the like epistolary conventions of his day, just in the way that he identifies himself as the sender, the way that he identifies the audience, the thanksgiving that he often gives at the beginning of a letter. All of these are much more elaborate than epistles tended to be in his day. And Romans is not only, not an exception in this regard, it's really an extreme case because it is a very elaborate introduction to the letter with like 6 verses devoted to Paul identifying himself and encapsulating the entire gospel that he's going to effectively unfold across the rest of the letter. So I like that way that you use to describe this letter, the urgency of Paul's gospel, and I'm pretty sympathetic with Keck's reading of Habakkuk because I think that it is right to read the prophets as open to kind of messianic development. And we don't need to sort of attribute that to any conscious intention of the author or identify that in an early stage in a text reception for the text to be genuinely open to that, depending on how that text lives across generations. And still, though, I guess I bristle a little bit at the distinction between anthropological and Christological. It's not that that might not be true at one level, but it doesn't seem to me like you can make sense of the Christological apart from the anthropological. The Christ is himself a human being and embodies the human in a particular way that has implications for all of the human. Paul is going to present Jesus himself as uh, the key son of Adam in Romans 5. And so I guess I just don't want to introduce a Christological interpretation that is not itself also anthropological myself. I'd rather hold those in a kind of constructive tension because there's a dynamic between how Jesus reveals the human, how Jesus relates to the rest of the human, both before his generation and in all of the humans since. I like what you said here in the second forum at the end, where you're talking about um, covenant faithfulness as a way of talking about the movement from faith to faith. I actually think that's right myself. I think that it is right to interpret from faith to faith as from the faith of God to the faith of the human. And this is a covenantal sort of dynamic. And faith in this sort of context is trustworthiness, reliability, faithfulness to promises. And that's exactly what the faith of the just is predicated on in Habakkuk, and what I think is then presented as being embodied in its fullness in Romans. And that's where, again, I'd want to hold together the Christological and the anthropological, because it seems to me like um, Jesus is not just one human covenant partner of God, he is the key human covenant partner of God. And we can add another layer here in that Jesus is the revelation of the faith of God as well. He is the heir of God's own life, as Paul presents him, and as the Son of God. And so, I think that we should see Jesus embodying the faith of God and the faith of the human as one person, as the key person in whom the future of God and the human are forever married. So, more food for discussion, I'm sure, but great to read your work here in week one and get the conversation going. Thanks for engaging the material well, and looking forward to studying Romans with you throughout the summer.